Welcome back, guys! Another episode of We Think We Know What We're Talking About on YouTube.
This one's called Show Me Your Rates.
So we got asked a question yesterday.
Nice.
And probably the day before.
And like the day before that.
And probably been asked this question a few times. How did we set up our rates? What are rates? How do I tune my rates?
Yeah. Definitely gotten it a few times.
So what's a rate?
A rate is your rotational velocity. So how fast can you spin, flip, roll, yaw, all that fun stuff.
I'm brand new. I just bought a quad. I just plugged in Betaflight. I just went to the PID tab. And I'm like, there's a lot of big numbers. Or small ones.
What do I do?
Or medium-sized ones. And you're like, I want to fly and have it feel good. What am I supposed to do? So the first step is figuring out what degrees a second you like. Right?
Yeah.
That's step number one. So degrees a second is how many degrees, like as in a 360 would be a full flip, does your quad do per second when you do a full stick movement. So if I'm full plastic to the right, if I run 360 degrees a second rates, it will flip one time per second. So the first question that they asked was, what are your rates? So you answered 900 degrees a second. And then you'll go on to say, let's say in Betaflight, which is what most people use, we run KISS, and it's actually the same numbers in both. You are talking about your rate number, your Super Expo,
RC rate. So the RC rate, that's the first number in both of these. Your RC rate is a linear scalar on your stick input. So whatever your range is, it just grows that. So it's a percentage increase. So when you go to 1, it means you get the full size of your stick input. When I go 0.9, it means 90% is the throw. So it doesn't necessarily shorten how far and where my resolution is. It's just saying it's 90% of the maximum value we would hit with that degrees per second. So that's linear. So if you just want to go up in rate, that's probably your easiest change if you don't want to change your curve.
And then the next number is called Super Expo, or in KISS it's called rate. And that is,
it's a little goofy.
Kind of a funky thing, right?
Yeah, so basically what the Super Expo or the rate in KISS does is it is stemmed out of Acro Plus, which is something that came from OpenPilot. And basically it was a way to bypass certain limitations of the system where you could only rotate so fast. And basically what it does is it somewhat limits the PID controller and just goes direct to motor output to spin you a little bit faster than maybe the gyro can pick up or whatever reason. Most people run rates under the gyro, which is usually around 2,000 degrees a second. So it's not completely necessary, but by bypassing the PID controller, it can sort of loosen it up, and you can get a similar to an Expo feel, where Expo, softens up in the center and loosens up at the edges.
So in that case, do you get a more direct input through Super Expo or rate? So like, for example, if I do a full stick and there's Expo involved, it got that little input from my radio, it added a little bit of Expo, and then it went on to the PID controller,
and then to the motors,
to rotate. Where with Super Expo or rate on KISS, it just goes boom right to the motors. It's like, give it to me now.
Yeah, it's sort of a percentage of that effect. So just because you put 1 there doesn't mean it's a full effect, or if you put 0 there, it's a 0 effect. It's, there's a behind the scenes max and minimum value you can have for it. But yeah, essentially bypasses some of your stability and allows you to have direct motor control, which does sort of affect how you tune the quad. So if you run with 0 super rate, your tune will have to be slightly different to have it fly the same. Now this has a problem because it's sort of mixing 2 worlds together that don't necessarily need to exist.
But the way we see it is Super Expo and Expo kind of do the same thing, at least for us in terms of stick feel. But Expo feels a little mushy because of those extra steps it has to take, or sticky, or whatever you want to call it, where Super Expo seems and feels more direct and crisp and more resolution and finite control, at least especially in the middle of the stick.
Yeah, definitely.
So from there, we used to use RC rate or RC input and expo to get the sticks to feel how we wanted. But then eventually we actually got rid of expo entirely, and now we're just doing the RC input and super expo as our numbers because it seems to feel more crisp. And we still get the same similar kind of curve where it's like more dead in the middle because we like a lot of expo, and then the full stick spin.
Yeah.
Full stick. From there, we're going to go on to talk about, Zach, what rates do you fly? And why do you fly those rates?
I fly 900 degrees a second with something that equivalent to about 80 expo. I like it because that's where I can comfortably do a snap flip and come back to center and be essentially perfectly level. I can do a half flip, a quarter flip, almost snap to any degree I need to be. And I sort of came back to this rate in sort of a backward sense where I went out and flew and kept adjusting my rates up and down and adjusting even the expo, because the expo is going to adjust how aggressively you reach your maximum rate. So basically I had like this natural tendency, I think everyone does, of how fast and how it felt comfortable to sort of flip or flick out a flip. And so I sort of tuned backwards from there to get it really comfortable to be able to hit that full flip, that half flip, and the quarter flip as accurately as possible every time. So now it's sort of just this muscle memory and that natural tendency where it feels comfortable just to go whoop and you're done.
Cool. What about you, Mo? What do you fly?
I fly 1,000 degrees a second, but only for like the last 2 weeks, so I don't know.
You're still trying to figure it out a little bit?
Yeah, it's still a little fast. I'll like over-rotate on my first battery.
Cool. And then I fly 850 degrees a second. And in terms of numbers, you fly in KISS and Betaflight, it's 0.9, 0.80.
Yeah, and it's the same for every axis.
Yeah. So I fly 0.85, 0.80. He flies 1.80. And that's what we were talking about earlier, where we got rid of Expo because Super Expo gives us that same feel. And then we only gave one set of numbers, and why is that?
Because we fly every single axis, roll, pitch, and yaw with the same rates. For me, it was sort of a personal decision a long time ago. I've always done this. It was, well, I guess yaw used to have a completely different scale, but ever since they all became the same, I did it mostly because I didn't know I needed a difference, and it was easier just to put all the same numbers in. And then I've sort of come to realize, when you have all of your rates the same, you have the same resolution of control on every axis, so it makes coordinated maneuvers easier, especially with like a 45-degree camera. You need to mix sort of yaw and roll about the same to make a corner.
Yep.
So those kind of maneuvers became much more natural, and it's almost like you're dancing with the sticks now.
Yeah, for me it made sense because like we at least fly symmetrical X-frames for the most part. I mean, the strikes that we sell, they are all symmetrical X's, and it's like, they're built that way so that the roll and the pitch are the same when you input stick, right? It's gonna react the same, where if it's a stretch X or an H quad, they're gonna be a little different because there's a different arm moving each axis.
Well, so the PID controller should be taking care of this.
Should be.
The thing you notice is you actually can max out your motors more when you have a longer moment because they have to spool up a lot faster. So like if you have a really small circle, you can hit high RPMs easy. When you have a really large circle, it takes a lot higher velocity to be out there rotating. So you would notice it a little bit, but in the end you should be able to tune this either with rates or even tune it out with PID. So all frames should fly the same.
Yeah, but why not just cut out all that extra stuff and just fly a symmetrical quad with symmetrical rates, and then you don't have to do these workaround kind of things, and it just kind of makes sense for us, and that's why we do it.
And I think another important part with the symmetrical rates even is to not, once you sort of figure out your natural tendency, you're not going to change much. Maybe once a year you can revisit this, but like once you have your rates figured out, you should stick with them. Changing up your rates specifically, that's how you control, that's your direct link to flying. If you're changing them all the time, all that practice you just had, you sort of throw out the window. You may be able to recognize and respond faster and understand situations better from that, but you're not going to be able to make those split-second decisions or those maneuvers quite the way you made them before.
So find some rates you like, get the muscle memory.
Get the muscle memory.
Find the rates you like, get the muscle memory down, and stick to it. And then if you're like, hey, I want to flip a little faster, you raise it a little bit, but don't like be going crazy and going super high rates to super low. You know, it's stick to something that seems about right. Get the feel for it. Get used to it. Like I recently, a couple months ago, switched from 800 degrees a second to 850 because I found myself when I was hitting little gaps and I was like doing a flip, I would come out just slightly under rotated, and adding that extra 0.85 at the very beginning made it so I came out more flat. And I mean, that's how you found your race, right? You were flipping and it was that natural tendency. And so find that natural tendency, fly a little line of sight, learn how your flip feels to your hand, tune to that, stick with it, work with it. That's how you tune rates.
So like if you notice yourself out on a track and you're, you know, flying through these gates and you go through a sweeping corner, we're starting to see more and more of these where you line up gates throughout a radius.
Yeah, the carousel.
Yeah, those are great corners. They practice tons of skills at once. If you haven't done those, go set those up now, and this will actually help you find, I guess, this will probably be the best way to sort of find your expo and see if you need to lower your rates. So essentially you're going to need to be running this banked corner, managing your elevation and cornering at the same time. It's very difficult, very tiny maneuvers all the time, but you don't actually want to have big throws. Otherwise you're going to be swerving all around. So if you notice yourself overcorrecting all the time, you know, either bump up your expo. I'd start by bumping your expo up, and then if that doesn't help enough, lower your rates some. And sort of go back and forth with those two until you can just have a nice solid corner through it. At the same time, you know, you have to be paying attention and actually be flying a proper corner. So what you're looking for here isn't piloting errors, but you're looking for, oh no, I'm just sort of jittering over the place, but you have that general line down anyway.
Yeah, our good friend Jesse, we used to make fun of him for having, you know, shaky thumbs, and it was pretty much because he didn't have enough expo in his yacht, or like all around. So when you would see him flying, he'd be doing like this little swimmy thing.
Yeah.
And it was just because his thumb was twitching around, and by adding a little bit of expo, it kind of lessened the effect of his thumb twitches, and it smoothed everything back out, right?
Yeah.
So if you notice a little twitchy, or if, you know, maybe you're, well, I guess overshooting, you might want to just lower your rates in general.
Yeah, so another good one is that, let's say, you know, set up a 90-degree corner or a complete U-turn even, where you have to throw real hard, and then hopefully you should put a gate right after the corner. This will probably show it to you the most. You should be able to enter that corner, hit it hard, and then straight into the gate. No hesitation, no blowout. If you notice yourself, you know, cutting tight, so really, if you're cutting the corner too tight, and then having to cut back, your rates are too high, or your expo's too low. It can be sort of a combination of both. Usually it's your rates too high. As long as you're running a middle amount of expo, you should be fine with almost any
Or
rate.
if you can't make the turn, so if you have to blow really far past a flag to be able to make the turn to come back, that means you need to raise them a bit so you can cut that properly.
Right. So really what you need to focus on is if you can get the right race line, notice what you're doing wrong with the rate. So it's very easy to blow out a corner with low rates, and it's very easy to oversteer with high rates. Those are the two main things to look for. And, you know, set up a couple scenarios where it really forces you to be accurate. You know, I think one of the best ones, at least for me, that I've noticed is hard, is a 90-degree corner into a gate. So set up a flag, have a 90-degree corner and a gate like 15, 20 feet off that flag, and see if you can stay low and hit that really hard. That's going to really show you what you need to do to your rates. You want to be able to come around that corner, whip it, and keep going straight. You don't want to have any extra steering.
Yeah, you shouldn't be Or, like for me at least, it's like little hallways or like a tunnel that you turn into. Like, so if there's a hallway and you turn into a hallway, you should be able to just continue straight out. Instead of, if you're going, whoa, 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 and like, you know, smashing into the walls, your rates are too high, or you need a little bit more expo. You know, just work those till you get it right. But in the end, all of our rates pretty much are the same, right?
Yeah,
it's roughly in the middle bit. They all feel identical. It's just when you go hard stick.
We're only 150 degrees apart. Yeah. So If that tells you much, that's a little under half a rotation a second, and that just comes down to our natural tendency. We have very similar curves, but that being said, the curves do vary. So with the higher rate, it will be a little more sensitive in the center as to the ends, but the shape of the curve remains the same.
If you have any more suggestions, topics, ideas, we know you want PIDs. They're
We'll work
really,
on that.
really, really hard to articulate because I don't understand them.
I don't understand.
He doesn't understand. He understands them, but it's, you gotta teach it, right? So just
Yeah.
understanding it isn't the bottom line. So
The thing is they're simple, but there's a lot of moving parts. So getting that explained in such a way that you can go, oh, I can start approaching this, and that's comfortable. That's what we're working on. We're trying to figure it out.
But
And
if he can teach us, then you can just sit there and learn along with us, and then it's a win-win, right? So
Dude, I
that's,
can't wait to learn how to do PID tuning.
but that's the goal. It's coming. We know you want it. It's really hard. It's going to take some time. But in the meantime, if you have any other topics, ideas, things you want us to just ramble about like this, little things that are easier, or even if you have philosophical ideas about drones, like why battery on top instead of battery on bottom, which we
That's
did
physics.
discuss in a previous video. Check out the
frame.
pick which frame I want to buy video, and that will kind of give
It's
you the
gonna be
philosophy
linked.
on
It's gonna be right here. We'll put it right,
Over my face.
that. Right over there.
Oh, also, let us know what you want Moke to say next time.
Coming up.
Don't say anything bad.
So smash that like button and subscribe.
All right, ta-ta. Ta-ta.